was a snow day, so I'm very happy to see all of you tonight. We have a couple of guests, as some of you may have recognized when they came in. We have Jen Brown, who's the new advisor in the graduate program, and we have Dean Joan Dollimore. A number of you know Dean Dollimore because you have him as your advisor. And of course, everyone knows Dr. Donna Janbeck. Many of you have had her in class, and communication professor, and she helps us with the graduate program and helping run the seminar series. Well, tonight we have a great opportunity. We're talking about organizational communication, for those of you who are in my class tonight, from someone who is a leader of this organization, so responsible for the organization here in the communication that takes place in our organization. So we're very fortunate that President Alexander has agreed to come and spend some time with you tonight to provide you with his perspective on organizational communication and leadership. And when he's completed with his insights, we're going to take a little bit of time and do an exercise on leadership and pretend that you're leaders in your own organization. I think most of you would know that President Alexander has been here at this college for about 7 years. And prior to that, he was a CEO in a private industry. And then before that, he was a general manager of a television station in New York City. So he does understand our field of communication from every perspective, from the perspective of the media, from the perspective of organizations. He also was the managing partner and founder of Echo Bridge Entertainment Company. He earned his A.B. degree in History and Literature from Harvard University, and his M.A. degree in Education from Ohio State University, and he completed all the coursework towards his doctorate at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Professor Barrett, and I welcome and good evening to all of you. I am honored to have this opportunity to participate in one of the first graduate communication seminars. Honored also to be an advisor in the communication department, and Professor Barrett gave you some of the reasons why that might be appropriate. I've been running organizations since 1983, approximately. I've run a USA Network, one of the national cable networks some of you may be familiar with. You can find on any cable operator's offerings. I ran a major New York television station. I ran a technology company that was headquartered in this area that did government services contractors and customer software development, completely different kind of company. I founded an independent film distribution company and ran that 4 years prior to having the fortunate opportunity to come here and be the president of LaSalle College, which, as she said, I'm now in my 7th year. I'm also the CEO of LaSalle Village, an entirely different kind of business, a continuing care retirement community, which has to work successfully and operate well. And that would be in the medical care and residential real estate industry, a whole different kind of thing. So as you see, I run organizations in a variety of industries, some of them related, some of them not. Broadcasting, media, television, technology, software, medical, retirement communities, and of course this college. And from that I found that there are certain things that are common about the operation leadership of all organizations. We're here today to talk about organizational communications. So how many of you have worked in some kind of organization sometime or other? All of you, right? So you've seen that any organization doesn't always operate smoothly, right? Things go wrong. And leadership is always trying to get things to operate as smoothly as possible, as effectively as possible, be as competitive as possible. If you're in the for-profit world or even the not-for-profit world, even colleges have to be competitive with other colleges to gain students, to attract high-quality faculty, to get the enrollments that will support the college, to attract charitable donations that many people are competing for, that will help all of you to have better experiences while you're here. So things go wrong. So what is it that causes things to go wrong in organizations? What do you think? Yes?
Maybe the lack of communication.
Pardon me?
I mean, if there's a lot of communication inside the organization, I mean, when there's a lot of communication, the people start to talk like a rumors inside the.
So organizations are made up of people, right? So there are always a lot of communication that goes on, right? And so what can go wrong with that? What can go wrong?
Breakdown in communication.
Communication can break down. What does that mean, break down?
If information can get siloed, I mean, there's so many potential ways that communication can break down.
Yeah, so communication can get siloed. What's your name?
I'm Leslie.
Leslie is saying that communication can get stuck in parts of the organization so other parts don't learn about that information. And that can make an organization less effective. What other ways?
Employees burnout. Employees burnout.
Employees burn out?
And,
Okay, what would cause employees to burn out?
a lot of tasks with a loss of time and pressure. Maybe they don't have enough employees, so that can cause them burnout.
So, so you're suggesting employees can burn out just by being overworked,
Yeah.
right? But I would suggest to you that employees are overworked in almost every organization, and they don't all burn out. So why is that? Why do they burn out in some organizations and not others? Yes?
I think burnout can be higher when employees aren't feeling valued or aren't able to appreciate the connection of their hard work to some goal or some component of feeling valued, that their contribution is valued within the greater organization.
Exactly. Did everybody hear that? Yes, exactly. What's your name?
Kristen.
Kristen is saying that when employees feel connected to the organization, to the mission of the organization, where they can see the value of the work that they're doing, where they can feel a part of it, where they can feel like they own it, they're unlikely to feel burned out no matter how hard they work. Right? What else? What else can go wrong? Lack of funds. Yes, a company can not be adequately capitalized. So how does that happen? Don't manage their money well, right? Well, so that gets in, that becomes circular. So what went wrong there? But sometimes the lack of capital can be they didn't have enough at the beginning, right? So it was a breakdown. They didn't properly analyze how much you need to support a company, to get it off the ground, to get it work, to sustain the company, right? That's a type of miscommunication, right? It might be analytic, but you have to. So I started an independent film distribution company. So this exact thing happened to me, okay? So I started an independent film distribution company in 2003. And I had, to do that, I had to go out and buy a bunch of libraries of movies so I could license them around the world and make money from that and gain cash to pay off and to pay back the cost that it would take to acquire those movies, right? So that's an expensive thing to do. Plus I needed to hire employees and start and pay rent and do all the things you have to do to form a company. So I needed money to do that, needed capital to do that. And so I went out to raise that capital. And in the end, raised a substantial, actually $39 million worth of capital. But, and so I had to communicate to the funders, the people who were investing in it, why we needed this money and how much we needed. Now my presentation said we needed $78 million of capital, all right? But we only raised 38, and they said, that's okay, we'll get the rest later. After we get going and show that this is working, we'll get the rest later. So what happened is this company got started and this grew, and today it's a $100 million company with $28 million a year cash flow. But it's never had adequate capital, so it's over leveraged. They had to borrow money to make up the difference because they never were able to come up with any more money after that original 39. So that was the communication. That was a breakdown in communications, if you will. Okay? So what are you trying, when you're running a company or organization or college, you're a leader, what are you trying to do? Let's say it's an ongoing, it's not a new one, it's ongoing. What's your objective as a leader? To make it better, right? the organization to improve? Any organization, I would submit to you an axiom. Everybody know what an axiom is? It's like something you agree is a self-evident truth, right? You're willing to accept this as a basic truth. That no organization stays the same, right? If you're not getting better, you're not improving, you're getting worse, right? So my job running the college is to make sure that this college is improving. It's getting better all the time. If it doesn't, it get worse. If it gets worse, it won't serve its students as well, and I'll be out of a job. So you gotta get better. So that's the axiom. Is everybody willing to accept that that's probably true? So from that one truth, you can derive a lot of things. It follows that you can only get better by changing. Right? If you don't change, you can't get better, right? So that means you got to do things differently. So the leader's job is to figure out how to cause change in the organization. All leaders' jobs. It really comes down to how to cause change. Any change? No. Positive change. Right? Positive change. Leadership is about creating positive change in an organization, or in a team, or in a singing group, or in a family. Whatever the group is that you are trying to provide leadership, you're trying to give direction to. It's about causing positive change. The means by which the leader provides positive change we call communication. Think about it. Is there any way to stir the pot, to make things change, to cause things other than by communication? It is really the tool we have, by using our voices, by using our nonverbal expression, by writing, by putting something on tape and showing it to people. It really breaks down one way or another. That's the tool by which we cause change in organizations. So, I want to come back to what can go wrong in organizations. Generally, it's not entirely true, but many, many problems, errors, when something goes, when a company fails, an organization fails, or when it goes backwards, when it doesn't get better but it gets worse, almost always, but not always, but almost always, it comes down, when you analyze it, to an error of communication. Some kind of mistake in communication. Okay? So there are basically two basic kinds of errors of communication in organizations. So who can guess or think about what the two types of errors might be? What can go wrong?
Maybe when the tasks are not clear or the workers' needs.
So what are the ways that tasks cannot be clear?
The job description itself, it's not clear.
Well, let's say I'm the leader. It's my responsibility to make clear what the expectations are for you in the job. So how can that go wrong?
If the employee doesn't understand what's exactly required from.
Right. So how would it be that you would not understand?
If I'm not asking, is that what's required? If I find like a problem or I'm not understanding, then I don't ask. There's going to be a problem.
That's true. If you don't understand, there's going to be a problem. So how could you get a misunderstanding? If I'm telling you something, and just break it down two-way communication, just me and you. What's your name?
Reem.
Reem?
Reem.
Reem. Okay, Reem. So it's just you and me, and it's my job to make sure you understand. What could happen that would lead to a misunderstanding?
So there is a message, you are the sender and I am the receiver.
Correct.
If there is any error during this process, then there is a problem.
Right. So if I tell you something wrong, that's incorrect, that would be a problem, right? That would lead to your misunderstanding. If you multiply that among a lot of people or across more complicated human dynamic, that can be really bad, right? That's called an error of commission, all right? That's one type of error. That is, I tell you the wrong thing. I make a mistake of communication. I'm trying to communicate some ideas, some thoughts, some expectations, a job assignment, and I miscommunicate. I make it. So that's one type of error, is an error of commission. All right? The nature of an error of commission is something that you did that is wrong. So it's out there. It's available for people to hear, to see, to understand. You might recognize that it's a mistake or that it's wrong. Okay? So that's actually a good thing because it's possible, therefore, to correct it. You might tell me, oh, wait, I don't think that's right. Are you sure that's correct? Or you might say, I don't understand. Right? So that gives me the opportunity to correct my miscommunication. Right? So the nature of errors of commission is that they are visible, if you let me use that word, visible or hearable. They're received, and therefore you can respond to it. It's possible for people to recognize it, to give you feedback on it, and therefore you have the opportunity to correct it. Okay? If I tell you something wrong, or if I make a mistake, if I tell everybody that the college needs to do such and such, do one thing and that's a wrong thing and it gets us in trouble, well, people can see that, they can react, they can evaluate it, they can judge it, and they can say, hey, I think we made a mistake here. So then we can change course and do something different. We can fix it. Right? That's the nature of an error of commission. So one type is an error of commission. What would be the other type? Pardon me?
Omission,
Right.
where you don't get involved.
Right. The other one is the error of omission. What would that be? How would you describe it here?
Transparency or context or not explaining correctly or fully.
Or not at all. Right? Right? Anybody had that experience where something went wrong and you realized it was something went wrong because you didn't know something? Because you hadn't learned something that maybe if you'd known it, it wouldn't have gone wrong? Of course, we've all had that happen. It all happens almost every day, right? But but in an organization, again, if it's my job to communicate with you individually or with all of you, if all of you are part of our company or our college, and my job, and I don't do it because I forget, and maybe I meant to do it, and I just forgot to. Maybe I'd never thought to communicate it to you in the first place. Maybe I getting a little older and I thought I told you, but I didn't. It sounds funny, but it happens. Right? I've even done this. I've even made a note to myself to tell people something. Tell the people I work with, I need to tell them this. So I make a note to myself. Because I made my note, I come down the next day, because I made the note to myself, I think I already did it. So, errors of omission are much more nefarious than errors of commission. Why would that be?
It's not visible.
Because it's not visible, right? It's not visible. So, if it's not visible, what does that mean? What's the effect of that?
You can't really see what's wrong.
Yeah, if I haven't told you, you don't know that I haven't told you, right? If I've made an error of omission, usually unwittingly, I don't know that I've made it, right? If I omitted it, by definition, if it's something that I knew that I should have told you, then I would have told you. So by being an error of omission, I don't know that I've done it. I don't recognize that I've done it, at least not right away. And so it's not visible. It's harder to correct. And it's more likely to fester. Because I'm not aware that I didn't tell you, because you're not aware that I didn't tell you, it can go on for a long time, that error. So errors of omission tend to be more difficult, more serious, harder to fix. They can go on longer, and therefore they can cause more trouble. And I can tell you that most of the things that have gone wrong in organizations that I've run, remember I've been running the organization since 1983, so over 30 years now. And when I go back and analyze them, I would say a good 90% of them, and they were things I could have prevented if I'd done things differently, I would say 90% of them are errors of omission. I've gotten pretty darn good at avoiding errors of commission or setting up systems or training Dean Dollimore to tell me, hey, that was pretty stupid what you just said there. That can't possibly be true, right? I've trained her to do that, right? So she's going to help me. She's going to give me feedback because we're in this thing together and we've got a relationship, and I've told her that I need that help. I'd like her to tell me about errors of omission too, but it's harder for her to know that I omitted it. However, Rem here said, yeah, but if I don't understand something, I should say something about it. That's that's one of the ways that you can protect yourself against errors of omission. If you could train the receivers to think of, geez, I think I'm missing something here. You know, is there something you haven't told me? What about this? What about that? Now, it's not quite their responsibility. It's more my responsibility to tell you. My job is to make sure people have the information to do their jobs, right? A leader's job is to give the people on the team, in the company, in the family, the information, the tools, the resources, the environment to be as successful as they can be. So it's my job to do that. So, but I need help, because nobody's perfect, right? So errors of omission are much more difficult and things that you should look out for in any organization. Okay? And try and build in human relationships that will help you overcome errors of omission. Okay? So that Rem will speak up when she doesn't understand. Instead of saying, oh geez, there must be something wrong with me because I don't understand, says, no, wait, it's not me. If I don't understand, there's probably a reason I don't understand. I'm a smart person. So if you speak up and say, I don't understand, can you explain to me, or is there something I'm missing? And then I might repeat it, or I might repeat something I didn't say. You know, I thought I said it, but I didn't. Or maybe I said it and it wasn't loud enough, you just didn't hear it. Or maybe I sent you an email and it got lost, so I thought you had the information, but you didn't. That's an opportunity to fix an error of omission. All right? So never be shy about doing that. I'll tell you a little story. I went to work for one of the Hollywood studios. I was a young guy, and I had been working in higher education. And they hired me as kind of an experiment to work at this Hollywood studio, MCA Universal, one of the big Hollywood studios. And they decided they were going to put me through, it was kind of unusual for them to hire me. I didn't have any experience in the business. And they were going to put me through this own customized training program. So they happened to have their legal files all centralized in one room. So they stuck me in the room and said, read the room. Read all the files in the room. And so I did that, and it was very interesting, and I learned all the inside stories about movies that had been started and canceled, and who was the originally signed to star in the movie, but who actually signed to star in the movie, or why one studio gave up on a movie and another studio picked it up and then it became a big hit. All these interesting things. Then they sent me, after I did that, they sent me to accounting. Said, the movie business is kind of an arcane accounting system. It doesn't work like other accounting systems. Go in there and figure out how this stuff works. Go trace the actual transactions through our company, which can be quite complicated, so until you understand how they work and why they work that way. And there are all these rules about how accounting works, published by an organization called FASB. And so I was learning this stuff. I was down there for weeks learning this stuff, and then I got to an area where I was trying to figure out how this company, which has operations all over the world, does foreign currency translation. So when a movie appears in another country and they use a different currency, you have to calculate what that currency is worth back in American dollars in order to record it on the books of the company. And there are complicated rules about how you do this. And those currency values are changing all the time, so they have to constantly be adjusted. And it depends on whether you make the calculation in another country or if you make it here, or it also matters when the money is actually sent back from one company to another, which may be a different time than you record it. See, it's complicated. I confused you already, right? Anyway, believe me, it's complicated. So I'm trying to figure this out. I'm looking at the actual transactions of the company and trying to make them match up with the rules that I've read about. And I can't make them work. 2 weeks I worked on this thing. And I couldn't figure it out. I said, geez, this stuff's complicated. This is really difficult. Why can't I understand this stuff? I must be an idiot. Oops, wait a minute. I'm not an idiot. I'm not an idiot. I looked at it again. 1 minute I realized, after I decided I wasn't an idiot, it was wrong. It had been wrong for 9 years. They'd been doing it wrong. Why? Because the controller, the former controller who was there 9 years ago, set up the system for how they accounted for it, told the employees how to do it. And the employees said, wait a minute, we're not sure that's right. Do it like I said or shut up. And they did. And they kept doing it that way for 9 years. It built up an $18 million error in the company over those 9 years, and I found it. Turned out, because of what happened in the changes in currencies during that time, it could have been an $18 million loss or an $18 million gain.
Which was it?
Happened to be an $18 million gain, thankfully. But that was large enough to normally be something you had to report publicly because it was such a big error at the time. However, that was the quarter that E.T. came out. How many people are old enough to know? How many people know the movie E.T.? E.T. at the time it came out was the largest grossing movie of all time up to that point. And so it was so large, that was the only quarter in the history of the company that an $18 million gain was not material.
And I'm sure they were happy with their hiring anyway.
So the point is, don't assume that you're the one who's in the wrong. Okay? That's the point, which was Rem's point. That if you don't understand, you should speak up and ask, because maybe you'll find an error. Now that happened to be an error of commission and omission, unusual case. But those are the types of errors in communication. Errors of commission, in summary, are primarily the responsibility of the communicator, right? Because I made the error. The error of commission is something I said wrong, or I did wrong. So that's primarily my responsibility. An error of omission is the responsibility of everybody, the communicator and the receiver of the communication. You're on equal standing for recognizing that there's been an omission. That's what I've been talking about
tell me if I'm getting ahead or off track. But the error of omission, I think, is a very interesting one. And one that I see in my own organization is people confuse items around confidentiality. In rare cases, people have a sense of information is power, and if I know this and you don't, it's going to help me get ahead. Now that's a little bit more rare, but truly where I see people getting stuck is really in this concept of what's confidential, what do people need to know, what's nice to know, and I see that going all the way to the top of the organization. And I'm now on a commission working with my CEO on questions that employees have, and he struggles with how much information to give to which employees and at what time. He doesn't want to be too transparent such that there's an ambiguity and people are afraid now of what that means. Or, and so I think almost then at the expense of not being transparent enough, and people have a little bit of information and it runs off. So I wondered if you had kind of comments to that concept where...
I have a lot of experience with that issue, yes. It is true that in many organizations, people withhold information. They choose to omit information, at least for a period of time, although maybe sometimes forever. And my observation is that generally, there's exceptions to every rule, that company, if that becomes endemic, if that is very much of that going on, that company or that organization will be disadvantaged in the competitive world. It will be harder for them to be successful. It will be harder for them to make positive change if there are people, including the leadership at the top, who are withholding information. Okay? So now I've tested out this thing, in 30 years of running organizations, I've actually tested out that question and I eventually, and now for a long time, come to the conclusion, taking the stance that I want everybody to know everything, with a few exceptions. Okay? And I found if everybody knows everything, it's almost impossible to do that, by the way. But if I'm trying to get everybody to know everything, they're in a better position to be effective in their jobs. Okay? The more they know, the more they're capable of making their own decisions. All right? So the people who I work with, the senior management team at the college, I want them to know everything, because I don't want them coming to me with every decision. First of all, we'd never make the decisions we need to make if you do that. And then you create a huge bottleneck at the top. That's a terrible idea. Today's world, where things change so fast, you've all experienced this, where things, technology is changing, the world's changing, media is changing, everything. It's so hard to break through the clutter of communication. All those things, you have to be responsive, you have to be quick. Organizations have to be responsive, have to be quick. And they can't do that if the people in the organization, and especially the people who are closest to the customer, closest to whoever it is that you're serving. Almost every organization is serving somebody, right? Unless those people are empowered to make decisions, to act quickly, in concert with the mission of and values of the organization. So everybody needs to know what the mission is. Everybody needs to know what the values are. Everybody needs to know what the direction is. And better yet, they should own it. That's a whole other topic about strategic planning, which isn't the topic for today. But generally, I believe that the more transparent you can be, the more open you can be. Now some organizations worry about proprietary information. They worry about other companies, their competitors getting this information. Okay? I found that generally is a false concern. Right? You can create an organization where information is totally open within the organization but proprietary outside the organization. And train and trust your employees to keep it confidential outside the organization but share it openly with everybody possible inside the organization. Okay? It's possible to do that. Exceptions, I believe, are things that are personal to individuals. So things like salaries, health issues, family issues. Almost entirely, they're just things that are personal to individuals. It's nobody's business but their own. Okay, there's a set of those things. And other people don't need to know that stuff. Or if they do, you tell only the people who have a need to know. That's not information that should be shared widely. And the other exception is major corporate action. If you have a company and you're considering merging with another company, you may, by law or by practice, need to keep that secret for a period of time. That's the other exception. Okay? I won't go too deeply into that because that's a topic for another time too. Okay? But the question what you've done is you've raised the question about how do you do that? How do you make sure that everybody in the organization knows everything? If you accept my conclusion, built from experience, that an organization will be most effective if you can get the information to people, you get the information out to everybody, that everybody knows what's going on, everybody knows how the company's doing, everybody's invested, everybody knows what the plan is, everybody knows what their role in the plan is, knows how important they are, how in sync they are, how much they are aligned with the mission and the purpose of the organization. It will be more effective. So how do you do that? All right? There are, in my mind, the way I think about it, there are 3 types of communication. Okay? So the first one, you think about a simple, just think of a simple diagram of an organization. I'm not suggesting that all organizations look like this or that they need to look like this, but just so you get an idea, so some representation of an organization with leaders, teams, groups, departments, divisions, individuals. Organizations are made up of people, right? It all comes down to people. You can only be as effective as the people in the organization. So my goal is to make everybody know everything, right? Okay? So the first and obvious way to do that is top-down communication, right? I have a lot of information as the president of the college, so my job is to communicate it through the organization, right? This way, right? So that's the first type. Normal, top-down, and through, direct communication. I give speeches, I send out emails, I give reports, I do everything I can to get you and everybody in the organization the information you need. Pretty direct, simple, normal, everyday stuff. Right? So that's the first type. What would be the second type in an organization?
Is it cascading through your leadership?
No, that's still top down. It's cascading through it. That's still direct and through. That's what I mean by through.
Okay.
It's cascading through the organization to every individual possible. I mean, that's good. It's necessary. It's appropriate. Anybody ever play the telephone game? Where I tell her one thing, and you take it around secretly. By the time it gets here, it's totally different, right? So something always gets lost in translation. It's not perfect, sending information down through an organization. But nevertheless, you got to do it. You do the best job you can. But what's the second? If that's direct, top down is one. What would be the second kind of communication?
Meetings, maybe. Set up meetings, like group meetings between the workers and the employees.
Yeah, that would, setting up meetings to communicate information would be part of the top down. Somebody else? Yeah?
I don't want to be your only speaker, sorry. I had 2 thoughts, but I think another important one is bottom up.
Okay, bottom up.
Yeah.
So,
Isn't that feedback?
pardon me?
Isn't it feedback from the bottom up?
Feedback, exactly, that's the word. That's the word I use. Feedback, okay? So feedback from the bottom up through the organization, right? So from here, these people are down here, are usually closest to the action, whether that's the manufacturing plan, where you make the products, or the customers, where you sell the products, or the resident assistants who are closest to the students, or the faculty who work with them every day. You want to get the feedback loops coming back this way so that the controllers of the information can process that feedback and then send it back through the top down. So you get information circulating in an organization. And it is through those feedback loops that an organization learns. You ever see books or even whole courses about organizational learning? You know, make a whole course out of it, think it's complicated. It's really, this is it. This is what it's about. It's about getting information flowing through an organization, getting feedback back so you can learn from it, correct it. You can sometimes find errors of omission that way. You collect feedback, you find ways to do it. There are formal and informal ways of getting feedback. In Japan, almost every organization has suggestion boxes. They have formal ways of collecting feedback from their employees, processing it, using it for constant improvement. There are informal ways to do it. Every organization has a grapevine, right? Everybody know what a grapevine is? It's the means by which rumors pass through an organization. Grapevines are actually a great informal way to get feedback. Recognizing it's not all true, that's one of the natures of feedback. It's not quite as reliable as the direct information. You have to interpret it, you have to analyze it before you use it. But nevertheless, there are formal and informal ways of getting feedback. One of the things I've learned in my 30 years of running organizations, generally, in the United States anyway, because of the nature of our culture, informal means are more effective than formal means. Okay? That may seem counterintuitive. It's not true everywhere. In Japan, it's not true. Formal means work better than informal. Different culture. Okay? But there's a third type of communication. Yes?
The cross communication.
Cross communication, very good. What's your name?
Salman.
Salman, very good. Cross communication. When people in departments start talking to each other across, this is anti-silo communication. Leslie, right? You just talked about silos at the beginning. Okay, this is how you break down silos, is when you get people in areas where they naturally work with each other to talk to people in other areas where they work with each other. So the marketing talks to production. So sales talks to accounting. So you get cross communication going. And what's the nature of cross communication compared to the other two? Well, what do you think? What would be the characteristics? What?
Lateral?
Lateral, yes. What else? So what would that tell you about it? Well, it's faster. It's faster. Because this process of going back and feeding it, that takes time. It has to be it gets filtered. It gets analyzed. Remember, I had to analyze, interpret it, and then prepare to communicate it again back through the organization. But this is direct, quick, relatively unfiltered. Right? It has to be taken with a little more grain of salt, but because we live in a competitive environment, if an organization gets good at cross communication, or all three types of communication, that's when it's really good. So you'll find organizations that are pretty good at direct communication, but their feedback loops are a little weak. Okay? You'll find stronger organizations that are more effective in changing to get better when they have strong feedback loops that they can use that information to improve. Okay? And then every once in a while, you'll find an organization that has both of those and communicates effectively directly across. That removes the bottlenecks. You're not running all the organization through this one node here at the top. So the bottlenecks are removed. So when you do that, you still have the other two types going too. You get all three types. That's an organization that's humming. That's an organization that works effectively because they can respond quickly to changes in the environment. They can adapt. They can evolve. And what happens if you evolve and adapt? You have an opportunity for positive change, right? As we said, we already agreed you have to change. Remember our axiom is you have to change. Because every organization either gets better or gets worse. So as leaders, we want to figure out how to get humming, how to get all three kinds of communication going. All right? So, what questions do you have or comments about that? Does that sound like something doable? Sound easy? Hmm? What do people think?
I mean, it's dependent on the leadership to determine which models really occur in the organization, right? I mean, employees can impact change, but it isn't enough to the leadership to sort of create the structures that.
I certainly consider it my responsibility to try and create that, yes. And now, not all leaders are aware of it. Not all leaders or people who run organizations even think about it or are trained in this. Think about this. But you all may grow up to be, probably will be, maybe some of you already are leaders of your organizations. You need to understand this because to be effective, you got to get better and better at that. For your organization to get better and change, you got to get better at that. Because that, remember, communication is the tool that one uses to affect positive change in an organization. Because it's really all about the people, right? I'm only as effective as the people I work with. If Joan and Professor Baird, if they aren't good at their jobs, it ain't gonna work, right? So my job is to put them in the best possible position to be effective, to use their skills and experience at the highest level they're capable of. And the way you do that is get them the information, the resources, the data to be effective. And this is the primary way you do it. Even if you're talking about tangible things, if you're talking about budgets, it comes down to this. Collecting information from the bottom about what people need, processing it, analyzing it. If you could break it out of the silos so people understand what their priorities are against other people's priorities, it works more effectively. Many organizations, we live in a technological age. So every organization now has a company or a college, any size of organization, has an information technology department, an IT department, right? So IT is servicing all the different areas of the organization. Everybody has desires and needs. I need this software, I need this program, I need this system. Oh, it's not working, I need it fixed. Oh, I need it to attach to this other system. Everybody has needs, okay? So a lot of organizations, all the divisions and departments are firing their needs at IT, saying, I need this, and then they wait around to get the service, and they get aggravated. They get, when's my project going to be done? And they're waiting. So it gets to be a problem because it takes a long time. Sometimes when it comes, it's not quite right. It has to be debugged. It has to be fixed. So this is a constant problem in many organizations. So we found over time that the solution to that problem is to make sure that everybody knows what everybody else's projects are and that they see the priority list of IT, because what IT is doing, they can never work on everything at once. It's just natural if you think about it. You can't do every project from every, they have to decide, well, let's work on this one first and then this one. So what happens when they publish the list of what they're working on and say, this is the one we've decided to do first, this one second, this one 10th, this one 20th. They publish that, and then they ask for feedback about it from all these people across organizations. So now, Me up here, I'm not involved in this at all. I'm nowhere near this. This conversation is happening across here. And so they see what the priorities are. So they have the opportunity to say, I think my project's more important than that one. I think it should move up the list. But you know what? They usually don't do that. Usually they say, you know, that other project of yours, that is important. Now I say, okay, I can wait. That's what happens. Then you get everybody working together. That's just an example. It happens in every other area too. But it almost always happens in IT in every organization. Until they learn that process of communication, which provides, so that everybody knows what's going on, feedback loops, direct cross communication between departments, understanding what each other's doing, understanding what the priorities are. It's always a problem until you get to that point. So, I asked if it's easy. It's not easy. I can tell you, I've been doing this a long time now. And I occasionally make errors of commission. And I all too often make errors of omission. Because I'm human. Because all these circles, all these lines, they're all humans. They're all human beings. We're all subject to error where none of us are perfect. Right? So, one of the things that this helps with, though, is that the closer you can get to it. I've never seen anybody get a perfect system. I mean, I've never seen any organization get a perfect system. The closer you can get to it, though, the more likely you are to identify errors, and particularly errors of omission, and then be able to fix them. And most of the organizations that are best at avoiding or at identifying and fixing errors of omission are usually the strongest organizations, and the ones that will be more effective in a highly competitive and difficult market. Okay, any other questions, comments? What do you think? Is this interesting? How many think it's interesting? How many think it'll be useful to them someday? All right. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to visit with you today. I look forward to seeing you around campus and helping you in any way I can.